Welcome everyone to Friday, the 10th of July. I am Boston Omofaye and this is Frontier Opening Bell. Welcome my panelists, a group of analysts drilling down on today's big stories across the Pan-African markets. Ali Kansacho from Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi. Good morning, Ali. It's good to have you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Ayo Dechebo is a chartered trader and a CEO at Afrinvest Securities. Good morning, Ayo. Ayo is based here in Lagos.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And Luke Ufojebe is the team lead in charge of equity research at Vetiva Capital Management. Luke, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Boasen. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It is no longer news that the global equities markets took a bit of a beating on Thursday. So let's show you how the African markets also shared in that. The Nigerian bourse finished around the flat line, 24,276. The Ivorian market, the BRVM, was deeper, winning 131.68. In Egypt, the top 30 finished 1.54% in negative territory. The Kenyan market, almost by the same margin, 1.41% at 132.5. And the South African GSE down 0.15%. The GSE also opened in the negative territory this morning, about 1.1%. So this rout in risk assets globally, including Frontier Africa, is out there even as we wrap up the week. But let's take on what's the big story around the East African market as we all get ready to finish off the week. Trans Century, which is an infrastructure company, says it's setting to delist from the Nairobi Securities Exchange, looking to hold a special meeting to that effect later this month. Meantime, in Mozambique, Total, the French oil giant, says it secured nearly $16 billion to continue its LNG project in that country. Meantime, Uganda may go the way of Kenya, which was quite controversial, in capping interest rates charged by commercial banks. And Zambia may be in economic troubles, but its copper output is still rising, 342,000 metric tons in the first 5 months of this year. How do you want to start, Ali?
So, Barson, let me just start with a quick overview on the COVID infection, because we've had some alarm bells ringing from the Africa CDC, from WHO. We crossed 500,000 infections on the continent. Yesterday we're 522,000 now. And just to give you a sense of the acceleration, 0 to 100,000 Barson took 98 days, 100,000 to 200,000, 18 days, 200 to 312 days, 300 to 409 days, 400 to 507 days. This is accelerating. John Nkesong of the Africa CDC talking about it speeding up. South Africa now popping way over the radar. Gauteng, the financial heartbeat of South Africa, under tremendous pressure. There were some horrible stories of cemeteries of over 1 million. It's pretty unbelievable being dug. So I think what we're seeing is symptomatic of what we're seeing worldwide and what took the equity markets lower yesterday, which is a concern that this thing is now running much faster than anybody previously expected. So I think just to make everyone appreciate that point. Now,
yes, I get the point, Ali. Again, no one is sure when the vaccine will come. I was just reading on Reuters this morning of some human testing being done in South Africa for a vaccine, and whether that could come on hand, handy in first quarter of next year.
Yes, so I think, we get this whole vaccine optimism trade in New York. Every time the market's down, they announce that there's a vaccine coming. But let's be realistic. I don't see a vaccine this side of this year. We're in now an exponential phase of acceleration, whether you call it in North America, in emerging markets, and in sub-Saharan Africa. I think there was a lot of comment, which was no different to what I listened on Fox News, saying, we dodged a silver bullet, Africa's somehow going to duck this thing. Forget that. That's nonsensical. That is debunked. What we're now in is a very dangerous phase for the continent, and we could see these numbers spike up quite considerably, which then adds to our challenge because most of our economies have made the decision that they can't afford to lock down. So we're opening up into an exponential uptick in infections. It's a very dangerous moment economically and medically. Now, to return to your headline stories, TransCentury, this is we've been talking about delisting at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, Kenya Airways recently, Canal Cobil, TransCentury, which came to the market at 50 shillings a share, is delisting at less than 2. So it's destroyed shareholder wealth, I'm afraid. So that announcement was made, popped higher yesterday on that announcement. Mozambique, Total, that's a big deal. This is a tough environment for the oil and gas sector. $15.8 billion is not small change. So it's a very big deal, transformative for Mozambique. But bear in mind, the area where this gas is in is suffering an Islamic insurgency. The Russians went in there. This is this very famous character that Putin has. He's known as Putin's chef. He was Putin's chef before. He's the fellow in Libya as well. And he withdrew because they couldn't handle it. Now we've heard that the South African army is going in there. Let's see what happens. So just bear that in mind. There is this insurgent type situation there, but 15.8 billion, big deal. Uganda, what I found interesting about this story is that they've reduced rates, Boasson, but commercial interest rates have gone up by a percentage point. So you've had this widening spread in Uganda. Uganda's trying to get to grips with that and saying, hey, hang on a second, this can't be right. So, but I tend to, speaking from Kenya, where we had this experience, it was an unmitigated disaster. Because what happened was credit was thwarted to the private sector. If I were the Ugandan authorities, I'd be very careful about trying to regulate their way out of this problem. Zambia copper output, that's a positive because, well, first of all, copper has hit a 2020 high this week, which is interesting. Zambia needs all the cash it can get. There have been serious challenges from a fiscal point of view. So I'm sure that's considered good news for those guys in Zambia, where, of course, worst performing currency in Africa this year, down about 25%. Bond prices also collapsed down to around 50 cents on the dollar because they've hired Lazards to help with the restructuring of their bonds. So that's some positive news in what has been a tough news environment for Zambia.
Thank you. Very interesting pan-East African view there from you, Ali. Thank you. Let's squeeze in here at this point in the Nigerian space. All the announcements around the first half of the year earnings is making the headlines. But Axela Funding says it's listing 11.50 billion Naira Series 1 bond on FMDQ Securities Exchange. Stanbic IBTC, one of Nigeria's leading banks, is having a board meeting later this month to discuss its first half 2020 interim dividend and other financials, by the way. PZ Cushons is announced plans to delist from the Ghana Stock Exchange. That's been approved by the stock exchange. Meantime, north of Nigeria, Mali, the Treasury is raising about 26.9 billion francs via bond auctions. So, Ayodeji, let's get started with you. On the Nigerian side, give us how did we finish off at the fixed income space yesterday?
Yes, yesterday the fixed income market, we continue to see that form of very strength because of the liquidity. Though what we saw, there was a refund, CRR refund yesterday, about 300 billion, which we expect would ease liquidity within the system. So, but by and large, because of the low interest rate environment, even for fund managers, they are also very cautious regarding just locking in their funds. So activity has been really very low within that space. And for most of the transactions that you see are majorly block trades that you see within that space. We spoke about Accela, the listing of the 11.5 billion Series 1, which is out of the is a 50 billion program, but this is the first shelf that has been listed. And Accela operates within the midstream oil and gas space and trying to see how they want to expand on their distribution of natural gas across West Africa, across Nigeria. And you know, gas is going to be the new big thing. Nigeria, we know a lot of there's still a lot of opportunities even within Nigeria, within that space. So I feel it's also a positive one for the market. And this, what we're also seeing now is that with the current interest rate environment, corporates are now have the opportunity to take advantage of this to, especially if looking at their short-term funding, they need to see how they want to bring down their cost of funds by issuing commercial paper at very low rates, while they also think about long-term projects and they can raise bonds. So we believe that if the current fixed income environment remains at this level, we should see more of corporates taking advantage of this low yield environment.
Interesting, Ayo. Let's get a look to talk to us on the equity side. Over the last few sessions, we've seen, this week, we've seen the banking sector leading the top movers in terms of the volume of transactions. What's driving this? Is this the latest FX rate adjustment, or is it the outlook on earnings, or what is it, Luke?
So thank you, Barton, for your question. The thing is that for a number of these banks, they are trading way below their fair estimates. And if you even try to compare them with other banks in sub-Saharan Africa, you notice that a number of them are actually trading at a discount relative to their peers. And that's why we noticed that investors started showing buy-side sentiment in some of them. However, given that we are already in the month of July, we think that a number of investors right now want to remain on the sidelines and just await the results of companies for the half year. This expectation is that we are going to see significant declines in top lines as well as bottom lines, mainly a reflection of the impact of COVID-19 on a number of these companies. So this month, you are going to definitely see sell-offs in the equity market as a result of unimpressive performances we'll be seeing from different companies. So the buy-side sentiment you've seen lately in the banking sector, you might not really see it any moment from now to the end of July. However, in the month of August, we believe that investors might begin to start cherry picking on stocks that are considered to be fundamentally sound and are trading at very low valuations. But this doesn't rule out the fact that the macroeconomic picture for Nigeria is still not great. The outlook for growth, the outlook for the Nigerian economy is still unimpressive. I mean, the base expectation is that the economy is going to contract, and that's definitely going to reflect on corporate performances across board. So for the long term,
yeah, please go ahead.
So for the rest of the year, I think we might just continue to see more like an undulating pattern in the equity market, where investors take advantage of low prices, and when they see sizable gains, they begin to take profit.
Okay, a couple of events happening around the macro space. Today, Mr. President, Nigerian president, is expected to sign budget 2020. It was approved early in the year. They finished off. But again, this is 7 months into the new year. Today, the finance minister is also unveiling the country's MTEF for 2021-2023. So these are two big macroeconomic events taking place today. I'm going to ask you, Luke and Ayo, a little bit later, in a couple of minutes, what are your thoughts around these developments that we have at the macro space, and what do they really mean for the rest of the year across the market space. But let's get on to through in South African markets. The GSC started today on a back foot in 1.1% about 2 hours ago to start the trading day, the final day of the week. The rand also weakened about 0.7% against the US dollar. Meantime, yesterday, the manufacturing output report from South Africa shows a plunging of 49.4% year-on-year in April. Factory output down 44.3% month-on-month. Meantime, in neighboring Namibia, a court has ordered Air Namibia to return to the skies, at least for now. And in Malawi, there's a new central bank governor, Wilson Banda, who was appointed by an equally brand new president. And the Minister of Finance in Uganda says they're launching the digital ECMS for an effective service delivery by the government. Ali, let's talk about the Malawian economy here and the appointment of a new central bank governor. I'm interested in that.
So, of course, Malawi recently had this very compelling win by the new incoming president, President Chakwera. It was a very interesting development because the opposition combined, and I think this is one of the few examples where the opposition has come into power across the continent. So a big development, a lot of excitement around this new president. Malawi's currency, the kwacha, is the only African currency that is in the positive this year against the dollar. So that of itself is quite interesting given the context we've had. And I think Wilson Banda, highly respected individual, surely has an opportunity to build on that positive political momentum that is there, and also at the same time develop the situation in Malawi. I saw that the American ambassador was being very supportive. The incoming president has a very strong evangelical base, so I think he's going to tap into that. And if the Americans can get behind Malawi as well, I think we're all going to be pleasantly surprised. It's a small economy, mostly agriculture, some mining, rare earths, Australian mining companies. But I think overall, my takeaway is keep an eye on it. There was some negative feedback yesterday because there were some appointments, which was reported as if the president had appointed his relatives to the cabinet. But what it really was, there was a husband and wife who got two roles, and the headline got messed up a little bit. But overall, I think this is a story we need to watch. It could be a very interesting development for that part of Southern Africa. And, I, for one, am quite bullish about what's going to happen in Malawi. And I would urge people, very small market, tiny stock market, but nevertheless, keep an eye on it. It could be an interesting play.
Give me 1 minute on South Africa. The manufacturing and factory output numbers were really, really wacky.
Yeah, I mean, this is what they call a sticker shock. When you see a number that's so enormous, you get shocked by it. Look, we expected something pretty dramatic. This was the hard lockdown period. This is what that's talking about. Level 5, when everybody was locked down, and now they've released that a little bit. So, once you get beyond the headline, you realize that, okay, it had a specific situation behind it. The question is going to be around the recovery. And if we look at the concern I have is South Africa's infection is spreading at such a fast pace. I think it's ranking 15th now in the world in terms of speed of infections. The health service is obviously overburdened now. And the question will be, how does Ramaphosa thread this needle, which is opening up the economy as well as managing the health emergency? And I think it's a fiendishly complicated catch-22. What is supportive right now, I think, is the gold price. The gold price, which is above $1,800, looks very strong to me. My target is above 2,000 by the end of the year. And I think if that happens, that supports the stock market. It supports the rand because you're selling gold and you're getting dollars in. So I think that's, but I am very concerned about the exogenous uncertainty, which is the virus, which remains unresolved and is spiraling at this enormous pace in South Africa. Just to finally touch on Uganda, Ministry of Finance, digital delivery. Look, we know that the COVID has accelerated the digital world. The old economy has been broken. You see that in the price of shares in the NASDAQ, for example, and it's no different to what we're experiencing here. So I think that's just...
The tech guys are the ones making the sunshine. They're the one making most of the COVID-19.
That's right, yes.
You look at yesterday, the Dow was down, the S&P was down, but NASDAQ was up.
Correct.
Surprising. So, well, let's give it to them. Everyone's got his day in the sun. Okay, so let me ask Ayodele what his thoughts are very quickly about the Nigeria's president signing the budget 2020 today, as well as the MTF 2020-2023 being disclosed later today, 3 p.m. Nigerian time by the finance minister.
Okay, I think this is a very interesting development, especially on the medium-term economic framework, expenditure framework rather. It means that we have begun to adopt that one-year cycle. If you look at last year, was the first time in a very long time that we had a January to December budget cycle. So this also sent a very positive signal to also investors, potential foreign direct investors, even amidst the COVID-19 virus. The signing of the budget, that's the revised budget now, into law today, is also positive. Based on the report the finance minister gave yesterday, that in terms of capital expenditure, they would be able to achieve about so far, they would have been able to achieve about 50% of what should have been achieved. If that is correct, that's very positive, because we know how their revenue has been very constrained, and that's it's a really something positive to look out for. I don't expect any major reaction because of that in our markets, both fixed income and the equities market. We're already expecting, we've seen the assumptions. But on the budget, what would be the major concern we all have is how will it be funded? Then how can we increase capital funding for capital expenditure, which is critical? We feel we still need more of that structure of the Sukuk bond that is tied mainly to infrastructure, and we can read the prospectus and see that these are the major projects that is tied to. Beyond that, also the partnership with the private investors, so that most of the funds allocated to capital expenditure can just be used as equity contribution and not necessarily to fund the entire project. That will give a higher multiplier effect than trying to fund those projects, because if we are able to expand and increase the number of projects we are doing, when you look at the multiplier effect, we'll see employment level would increase, output would also increase. So it will help reduce the negative impact COVID-19 is having on our revenue, on our economy and activity as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. Let me ask Luke if he thinks this macroeconomic development space could mean anything from the equity side, at least in the short to medium term.
Yeah, so speaking about the signing of the budget into law, I think it's coming later than when it should have been signed into law, given that for a number of countries all over the world, a number of them revised their budget in the month of February, and their budgets were eventually signed into law in the month of March. So I think for Nigeria, the government needs to review some of the bureaucracies that delayed the signing of the budget into law, because this is something that should have been done quite earlier than this. So really, I don't think in the investment fair is really going to change anything. It's not really going to influence trading sentiment in the equity market. Because, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, the outlook for the Nigerian economy is unimpressive. So I think that's what's going to guide um, the major part of investors' trading sentiment. So
Okay.
I do not really think it's going to materially impact trading sentiment in the equity market
Not a game
as
changer.
well as the fixed income market. Sorry, what did you say?
Not a game changer.
No, it's not really a game changer.
Not a game changer. Okay, great. Let's throw the North African market into it. Thank you. Look, let's throw in the North African market as we custom on the show. The EGX was part of the drop down yesterday in the marketplace, 1.54%. Commercial International Bank was down 1.1%. Cleopatra Hospitals down nearly 5%, dragged the EGX 30. Meantime, Egypt's headline inflation climbed to 5.6% in June from 4.7% previous, and the central bank yesterday issued 20 billion Egyptian pounds treasury bills via auction. Meantime, the Sudanese prime minister replaced the finance, the energy, and the foreign affairs ministers. Ali, I'm sure this is an interesting story for you.
Yes, let me start with Sudan. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic governmental reshuffle. Finance, energy, foreign affairs, these are big dockets. I think, Sudan has made a tremendous amount of progress since the overthrow of Omar al-Bashir, but people haven't put money to work yet, and that's what's required. But I sense that we're going to see some money back up the Prime Minister here, Hanok, and I'm bullish about the situation in Sudan. So I think this is part of the reform program, the attempt to sort of tack back into a normal state, operating normally after the dictatorship that we saw. So positive development. With respect to Egypt, inflation, that's a bit of a concern. That's probably food prices. And then what I also found interesting was President Sisi okaying an increased equity stake in African Development Bank. That's another very positive vote in favor of President Adesina and what the AFDB is doing.
Interesting. Again, we've seen a couple of developments across Africa. As you said, if we look at Sudan, for example, the replacement of the finance and energy minister, and of course, we find a new president in Malawi and a new central bank governor. So it looks like even for countries like Sudan, who's got a number of insecurity issues and instability under the previous administration, it looks like this COVID-19 is bringing everybody together to the table and begin to set the corrective course that is necessary. Because at the end of the day, you've got a lot to deal with, and this looks like some. Sorry, so I'm as bullish as you are. Thank you so much, Ali, for coming from Frontier Open Belt. Do have a great weekend. Luke Ofojebe, who is the team lead in charge of equity research at Betiba Capital, thank you very much as well. It's good to have you. And Ayode Jebo, the CEO at Afrinvest Securities. Do have a great weekend, everyone. And we'll see you back on Monday here on the show. Bye for now.